Hey, everybody, welcome back to Fear to Freedom, One Story at a Time. I am Coach Cory Thorell. Um, I am a coach, super conscious coach. I work with neuro-linguistic programming and timeline therapy and positive psychology and many, many, many other things to help people make it back to creating the life that they love. And I want to ask a powerful question. What if the very beliefs that once held you back are the keys to unlocking your true potential, waiting to be released so you can finally create the life that you were always meant to live? Once again, welcome to Fear to Freedom. I am joined today by my friend Casey Kang. She's a cancer coach, and she and I met a couple of weeks ago talking about our client journey, talking about fear, uncertainty, and doubt, talking about the road to get from there to here. And I'm super excited to have you, Casey, coming in from Santa Barbara, California. Casey, say hello and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Corey, for having me. I really appreciate it and being here. And yes, I am a trauma-informed cancer coach. I use somatic movement and breath work with survivors so they heal and are able to reclaim their life and learn how to live healthier to ensure that they are physically, mentally, and emotionally stronger and aren't living a life in fear.
Oh, so good. I mean, right off the bat, Casey, just that word, the C word, cancer,
Hmm.
just me personally is a trigger. I lost my sister when she was 18, when I was a freshman in high school. And I've lost many, many friends, and in part of my history, in my own journey, I've done some death doula work, end of life ritual work, especially for cancer patients. And sometimes that's shown up with some of the indigenous medicines, medicine therapy, working with shamans to make peace with the end of life, and so I really understand the work you're doing. And I understand the service you provide. And one of the things that I would like to add into our conversation is it's not just caring for the person with cancer, it's caring for the caregivers of that person. And the ring goes one further. It's caring for the caregivers of the caregivers
Yeah.
of that situation, the ecology of cancer.
Hmm.
And so, oh, brings a little tear to my eye already thinking about that. And so those of you out there in the world, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, cancer, a diagnosis shows up in your world. Holy cow, what happens next?
Right? It's really a question you never think you're gonna have to ask yourself until it happens. And let me tell you, because we're gonna dive into like so much of the fear, is the minute you are diagnosed as a three-time cancer survivor myself, the minute you are diagnosed and they tell you it's cancer, your immediate fear is like, am I going to die? That's it. It's a gut reaction. It's like that instinct, that survival, and that's the fear doesn't go away. um Especially for me, like I thought, okay, like I just need to get through this treatment. It was an 18-month long protocol, and 4 months into it I had a massive stroke that left me temporarily paralyzed on my left side. So I'm like, you know, I'm thinking I'm okay, but I wasn't okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And, that was really scary because I didn't know, like, is my body gonna function again?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
I had no idea.
yeah. So, Casey, in so many of these conversations, especially in my own coaching, when I'm working with clients with fear, we live in a world of over sensationalism everywhere, and we're literally taught to be afraid with every thought we think, every marketing piece, every advertisement, every message from coming from our spiritual institutions, hellfire and damnation, from our politics, keeping us powerless. Fear is a common thing in our culture right now. And and we've normalized the abnormal quality of being afraid.
Yeah.
Like in part of my story, my fear story is I had normalized it so much I didn't know I was afraid until I
Right?
got sick. that I didn't know I was operating from a place of protection, a place of safety, and a place of those kinds of things. But in my coaching journey, so many of my clients that I work with, one of the first things that I can identify is that, oh, wait a second, fear. Oh my gosh, that initial response of fear. Oh, you stop in your tracks,
Mhm.
like immediate danger. Do I need to climb a tree to save my life? Is a tiger eating my belly right now? Am I actually in danger? And most of us are not in immediate danger. And then there's the intellectual jump to go, oh, wait a second. If I'm not in immediate danger, I can allow the overwhelm of fear to come and use it on purpose.
Right?
But we're talking in this moment about there is an immediate danger
Mhm.
and how that changes everything.
Yeah, it does.
Mhm.
And you're making decisions every day just based on like, is this gonna kill me or not? And will I survive? Is every day like, am I gonna make it to the next and the next and the next? Because, I will say I was like, okay, people survive cancer, and I knew that logically. Until I had the stroke, I didn't really think it was ever going to get that bad.
Mhm.
But for me, it like got worse.
Yeah. Wow.
And so like literal fear of death was every day. And it got really scary towards the end of my journey when I heard the words, your cancer is back, 7 weeks after I was finished.
Mhm.
And they were like, your body's not responding to chemotherapy. Okay, so what are our options? Two options: immunotherapy or one clinical trial. Immunotherapy failed, almost killed me. Like literally sent me into a cytokine release storm where your body starts to eat itself from the inside out and basically like shuts down. Then the clinical trial, I did all the testing for it a week before I was supposed to start, it gets shut down. So I look at my oncology team and I say, okay, well, now what? And they're like, well, there's one clinical trial going on at another hospital, but it's full and there's a wait list. And and they were like, even if we get you on the wait list, which we're going to do, it doesn't mean you're going to qualify.
Mhm.
And the way they prefaced it made it sound like the wait list was very long.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, so in reality, like, how long can you keep me alive in this condition with blood, platelets, doing like keeping the cancer at bay? They were like, maybe 6 months. And I was like, oof.
Mhm.
And like, you hear those words, but you're not logically thinking that. And so about a couple weeks later, the doctors' conference for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society ended, and they had shared that there was this immunotherapy they wanted me to try. And the outcomes were not good. It was for a different type of cancer as well. And based on my previous experience, I wasn't like, yes, let's do it. I really had to like take a step back and go, this actually might kill you.
Mhm.
Like immediately. Maybe you get 6 more months, but like this could actually like hurt you. And so after so much debate, like I just said, you know what, I'm gonna die anyways. So like, why not?
Mhm.
At
Mhm.
least helping someone else maybe.
Wow.
And it was one of those moments where I was like, I might not live, but at least somebody else will have the opportunity.
I want to pause right there. And Casey, this is one of the things I do in my practice is when something really juicy shows up in the conversation, I just want to invite a pause
Mhm.
to let it sink in. Because right here's a moment where the phrase hopeful, hopelessness shows up.
Right?
And that's something that I work with too. What is it to be hopeful in your hopelessness? So you just claim something that I think about a lot.
Right? And that was what I thought in that moment was, but it could, it might, right? Like it could, it might, maybe.
Mhm.
And like even that glimmer of language around it was like, okay, well, you never know, right? You never know.
Yeah.
Knowing like the flip side also. And it's so true because like you just need like I'm talking like an ounce of hope.
Yeah.
Ounce. That's it. And
Yeah.
it's powerful.
Yeah. So before we move beyond this moment of your story, I want to ask a little more about your immediate ecology, your support system, the people around you, because they're afraid too.
Yeah, everyone was afraid, you know, my husband at the time we're not together anymore.
Mm.
Um it was really scary. It was he left the decision up to me, but we did talk about it and he kind of left it in with me to drive my own bus. He's like I can't make that decision for you, but he goes, I want you to be alive. Like I want you here, and if this means you might be here, like I think we should do it despite what was on paper, despite the outcomes not being good, and despite the lack of even information. um the clinical trial, I think, that I didn't end up going on really crushed him more than me because he was so like this is going to help you, it's going to get you there, and he put a lot of his eggs in that basket, whereas I kind of didn't get attached to it. I was just like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. And to see his reaction to these two pieces of paper, I mean, he tried to Google and tried to research as much as possible, but there was nothing to Google. There was nothing to research. And, my dad and my family, like, it got really scary where friends would visit and it was like the elephant was in the room, but we weren't talking about it yet.
Yeah. I'm so glad we're talking about this piece of the puzzle, just because, you are scared for your own life, and then you become aware. I mean, this is me making an assumption, right? Because this is what I've seen in my story. Is now all of a sudden you're aware of your own life, and now you're aware of the people who love you, worried about you, and now you're caring for them too. You're worrying for them too,
Yeah.
for sure. So now there's this bonding, wounding going on. And what I've seen in that world is that there's almost that huge elephant in the room. It's like, okay, what we do have together, we want it to be good, sweet, encouraging, all of those things, which makes it harder to have the conversation that needs to happen.
It really does. And people did their best to put on that brave face of just being there and being positive, but you could see it. You could see it behind everything. Is just like it almost felt like people were handling a very expensive glass jar with gloves on it, and they didn't really know how to even hold it because they've never had something that precious in their hands.
Yeah. So there's a little of that ecology. And then, like I mentioned when we first started, there's for example, in our example today, your circle of caregivers. And then there's the outer ring of everybody else who's watching you all dance together.
Mhm.
You
Right?
know, and now they're more powerful than we ever give them credit for,
Hmm.
because they're the ones that are showing up the surprise mess, the crash, the breakdown. They're the ones who catch that because of the sacred sanctity of the inner circle being held in this white elephant conversation.
Right?
Yeah. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the caregivers and the caregivers of the caregivers.
Yeah.
Because in my work of this, often they're the ones who don't get seen, but this impact touches them too.
Right? Like all the people that supported my husband at that time, I didn't know that he was meeting them for lunch and all these other things, because he was just like, "Oh, I just need a break from the hospital." He wouldn't tell me, like, because he didn't want me to feel like I was missing out um from anything, right? Like you're locked in a box. I'm going on day 60 something and locked in the hospital. And so he didn't want me to feel like, because mentally at that point I was really struggling, because you can't leave. You're not, you know, and he didn't want me to feel the that I couldn't have freedom when he could.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they would meet and, support him, supporting me, and he'd come back to the room and brave face it.
So they would fill his well so he could fill yours. Thanks for just bringing that part of the story into the journey today.
Yeah. It's important. I think that the caregivers, they don't get enough credit and they don't get enough resources for themselves,
Training,
right?
good know-how,
Right.
for sure. So let's come back to you.
So I'm on going on day like 60 something in the hospital, and I'm like, I need to go home. Like, I can't be here anymore. I will come back every single day if you need me to, but I can't. I need to breathe air. I need to have sleep. I need things, right? Because you never sleep in a hospital. And they were like, okay, we'll let you out, but you promise to come back. I was like, yes, I promise. I haven't missed an appointment thus far, and we're on year like 2, right? And I said, they were like, okay, we're going to write a letter of compassion to the FDA and the drug manufacturer to get access to this. They're like, that does not mean because we write this letter, they will grant it.
Mhm.
So we're going to write it, but just know it can still get denied.
Yeah.
So when you leave, settle your affairs.
Well,
So, ooh, that was like, because now I'm 32, and
mhm.
that's where I'm headed. And ooh,
Mhm.
I went
And
home and did that,
32 has even thought about anything like that. Right.
right?
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of my life, not the end, right? In my mind.
Mhm.
And so I leave, and I do that. I planned a funeral. I tried to drive the bus on my funeral, and my husband at the time was like, "You're not gonna be here. Stop telling me what to do."
Mhm.
Which I appreciate the levity in all of it from him, but he was right. Like was trying to control my afterlife, and he's like, "That's not what I want." Selfishly not realizing like the funeral is actually for everyone else, not for me. Right.
Yep.
And
There's
so,
another letting go.
what's that?
All the letting go you're being asked to face, there's another one.
Right?
Yeah.
That I won't be there. And I had very specific instructions for him and all these things. And, one of the hardest conversations that I had to have were with friends and family, but with my dad.
Mhm.
My
Oh,
dad showed up every single day, even if just to say hi to make sure I was okay.
thanks, Pop.
Right. In that conversation, we talked about the elephant in the room.
Mhm.
And when I had that conversation with him, I couldn't even look him in the face. And I just said, you know what, Dad, I might not be here. And he, without skipping a beat, as I'm holding back tears, he goes, sometimes we don't make it to the end. And I was so angry because what I really wanted him to say was, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be fine.
Mhm.
And he couldn't.
Yeah. We had a similar moment in our story with my sister when she passed. When the day we dealt with elephant in the room, and she got mad, and then she died the next day. Whew.
Yeah. So it was really scary for not just me, but for everyone around me.
Yeah.
And I made my peace. But I never ever lost that tiny little glimmer of hope.
Oh, tell us more.
Something inside of me was just like, you're not dying from this. And I have no medical evidence. I have no lot, like, nothing to support that at this time. But there was just like this gut feeling of like, this isn't going to kill you. And I can't explain it. And I've talked to many of my other clients that have been in similar positions as me. And they're like, yeah, I feel that. I felt that too. Or like, it doesn't logistically make sense, but it's this knowing. And, you know, the women that I work with a lot, like I have 10 women that I've worked with and are working with that are all stage 4, but NED, no evidence of disease. Medically speaking, that technically can't coexist.
Yeah.
So there's something to this that goes beyond medical science.
Mhm.
There's something so much more powerful out there, and I don't know what it is. I can't explain it, but it's there,
I agree with you.
right? It's that little tiny hope. That
There
little,
is something more.
yep.
There's
It's a
something.
drug. It's one of the most powerful drugs you can have.
Yes. Yeah. And now we're talking about engaged hopefulness, which is anticipation.
Hmm.
I think is anticipation is the byproduct of appreciation.
Right?
And I love to define appreciation. Appreciation is the highest frequency emotion on the emotional scale. And I think the reason for that is because when we arrive, happiness, joy, gratitude, appreciation at the top, and that's when we accept the good and the bad. We accept all elements of shadow and light at the same time, for they require each other.
Hmm.
And then we can give permission to both exist at the same time.
Right?
And when we're in that energy, we are able to take 100% responsibility for our life, all of it.
Hmm.
And then when we choose life, life chooses us.
Yeah.
Love that phrase. And this is something I work on all the time in redefining what does that mean when we choose life, life chooses us. In that choice of life, however you choose to go, that's what we're going to get.
Yeah.
If we choose to fight back, the universe will fight. Oh, that's what we're doing today. Great, let's fight. If we're going to choose disease, okay, great. That's what we're going to do today. Great, let's do that.
Right.
You know, source, God, energy, whatever we call this, life force, the Huna.
Hmm.
Right? It doesn't have judgment about right or wrong. It just goes, oh, that's what we're doing today. So let's do more of that.
I agree.
Yeah. So tell us a little more about, all of a sudden, I mean, you're still here. You're still
I mean,
here.
yeah, spoiler alert, I got the drug. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will share this. I got the drug, did 4 rounds of it, went through a stem cell transplant. 6 months into my recovery from that, my brother's my donor, and I relapsed again. And they caught it so soon because I was still going weekly for blood work. I wasn't feeling anything, although I felt like garbage for that 6 months. So like what was anything I couldn't decipher. And in that moment, because I wasn't physically recovered, I wasn't mentally or emotionally like able to really handle anything more, I gave up. I started crying and I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Like I was just like, I complete surrender. I was like, I'm so done. I wasn't physically, mentally, emotionally in a place to even start fighting. And I started crying, and my husband put his shoulder or hand on my shoulder and said, "Whatever you decide is what we're going to do." And I needed that permission to go, "Okay, it's okay." And I kept crying, and I just all of a sudden this voice popped into my head and said, "Your dad would be so disappointed in you." I was like, "What?" To come
Mhm.
this far and then just give up. And I was like, "Oof, of course that guy."
Yeah.
And that's when I made my quote unquote, I say, deal with the universe. I didn't say it out loud, but I said in my head, I said, "Fine." I go, "I don't care if I live or die." I go, "But this fight is for them, for my husband, for my family, for my dad, for my friends that got me to this point."
Oh.
Because I didn't care if I lived or died.
Mhm.
And I said, "But we're done." I go, "You're either going to kill me or you're going to let me live. I'm not doing this for the rest of my life."
There's a threshold point right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you let me live, I promise I will do everything that I can to not go through this again and not put the people I love through this again. And I looked back up at him and I said, "Fine, one more time, but that's it."
Mhm.
He goes, "Okay." And so we ended up doing 4 more rounds of immunotherapy, and I was supposed to do another stem cell transplant. And my medical team changed and pivoted on me and said, "We're just going to wait to see what happens."
Mhm.
And I was like, "That's a terrible plan."
Hey, thanks for that.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Like, so you're telling me you're just going to wait for my cancer to come back? Is that what we're doing? And they were like, "No, we don't know what's going to happen." I was like, "Exactly."
Uh-huh.
And I was like, "How long are we going to do this?" They're like, "We don't know. We haven't decided yet." And I was like, "What the?" Like,
Uh-huh.
it was like, so I was like, "So how do I live now?" Like, am I gonna anticipate cancer coming back, or am I like supposed to like anticipate it not coming back? What are we doing?
Yeah.
And so for like 6 months, I would still go back to the hospital every week, blood, platelets, or appointments. And every time I saw my oncologist in her thick Russian accent, she'd grab my shoulder and she'd go, "Baby girl, we're just lucky you're alive." Like,
WTF.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
what are you talking about? Was it that bad and no one told me? Like, what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
And so finally, like I worked up the courage. I was like, in one of the appointments, I was like, "So do you think I can go live again?" And they looked at me, they're like, "We think so." I was like, Okay, great. So how do I do that?" And they're like, "Eat right and exercise." And I was like, "That doesn't sound like it's that's what I should be doing."
I want to pause again. I want to capture a moment again, because here's this, what I can see in your story is that you've been in up until now in this healing. The cancer came, it went, it came back again. Wait, 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 wait. No clear guidance, no clear news, no good plans, limbo, hanging out, waiting, 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 waiting. Oh my God, I'm still waiting.
Yeah.
Am I right? Yeah. So in
That's
that, in the waiting,
yeah.
and then the questioning of the authority. Okay, big pharma, thank you for getting me here. And now you're starting to gaze outside their box. All of a sudden, they don't have your next step. Am I right?
Right.
So now you're gazing outside the box,
Right. Because
which,
I
which
also,
means we're burning the box.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was in this proverbial gray area of
Mhm.
of treatment because they were like, well, you did an immunotherapy that like literally isn't, it's not, it wasn't even in a clinical trial at that time. They just were like,
There's no
compassion,
data.
yeah, compassionate care, which means like basically you're gonna die, so want to try something.
Yeah.
Um,
So let's engage you with happiness and joy and relief and comfort because that's all we have now.
yeah.
So then what?
So I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go live life, but I was riddled with fear still, like every day thinking, well, today's gonna be the day it's gonna come back, right? Like woke up with that feeling, woke up sometimes during the middle of the night with that feeling. Now I'm sitting here with complex, you know, PTSD and all this trauma that I'm carrying around because trust me, like you don't pick it up. It's so every poke and prod, like it all my body all remembered it. And I'd have panic attacks coming to going to normal doctor's appointments, like the eye doctor. And there's just like all this stuff you're carrying around. And I
Yeah,
was
you
like,
have a trigger for every one of them.
100%.
Yeah.
And how I was trying to cope. I was in therapy, by the way, through a lot of this. And I still had a nervous breakdown where I just fell to the floor in my kitchen and I go, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm terrified cancer's coming back. Everyone said I should be happy. I'm not happy. Like, I'm not. It was the first time I admitted that I wasn't okay, too. Because I was like, oh, I'm fine. I'm okay. I was not okay. I was white knuckling life, trying to be okay. And then I thought I was a crazy person because no one was talking about the complexities of surviving. And I was like shaming and blaming myself for like not being able to figure it out and not be okay.
And that's an endless loop.
100% because it didn't serve you, right?
Oscillating in the realms of hell. Yeah,
Right? It keeps you stuck. It keeps you exactly where you're at.
for sure.
So I was like, okay, I'm in therapy. I'm doing the things and like it's still not working. What's wrong? And that night that I had my nervous breakdown, I literally had that pep talk inside my head again and was like, you need to put your big girl pants on and figure it out because you're not going to make it otherwise. And I was like, oof, because no one's going to come and help you. No one's going to save you. And I said, okay, because remember, you made that promise that you would do things differently. And so I just started researching. I started talking to experts. I started trying to understand the trauma and the PTSD because the first thing I was like, well, if I want to even feel better, I have to stop being afraid.
Mhm.
Because right now, all you think about is cancer coming back,
Yeah. And if that's all you're thinking about, you're inviting it to happen.
right?
And I love, especially like the audience who's been following me on this episode, they've heard me say a bunch of times, fear is proof of ignorance, which is an opportunity to learn and grow.
Mhm.
So this is where I see you in your story, like, okay, I was looking out for solutions to hospitals and science and research, and we've come a long way with cancer. Big shouts out to everyone in that industry and every one of the people engaged with that in their own story. But all of a sudden, there's got to be more.
Right.
Like
And I
there's
mean,
got to be more.
and Corey, I'm not the only one that like is like completely paralyzed by the fear when they get done.
Yes,
A lot of my clients and like cancer in general, it's like the number one thing is the fear that it's gonna come back.
you betcha. And then we normalize the abnormal of that fear.
Mhm.
We walk with it.
I know. When we don't have to.
We don't have to.
We don't have to.
We don't have to. And so that's why I like in this podcast, like what we're doing here is okay, let's redefine fear and
Mhm.
uncertainty and doubt. They go together as opposed to the crippling agents that they can be and most often are because we are not emotionally intelligent in this way. We are not taught how to do this in our culture. In fact, we're taught not how to do it.
I
You
agree.
know, and so in that journey to say, okay, how can fear be your number one knight in shining armor on your path? Well, I say something like that, people go, what, Cory, who are you? I say, well, listen to me though. Fear, when we have fear, there's an opportunity, to say, wait, slow down, stop, hold on, hold on, hold on. I might be moving too fast in the wrong lane, maybe.
Mhm.
And something inside of us, our spirit knocks on the door and says, what you're doing is not necessarily sustainable. Maybe there's another option. And if we don't hear it at first, ignore it. But I have a life, I have the job, I have the thing, I did all the stuff. And I'm going to defend all of my choices forever and ever and ever. Then your spirit goes, yeah, but. And it knocks louder. And then it
Right.
knocks louder. And then our world starts to fall apart. And then maybe we get disease and get sick energetically, spiritually. This was my story too. I mean, I found myself death's door, full blown AIDS, oxygen tank pulled behind me, and no one could help me. I have a real similar story, energetics and all.
Yeah.
And then there's that moment when all of a sudden I couldn't find my answer outside myself. And it was time to look in.
Yeah.
It's time to look in.
Oh, I couldn't have said it better because that's exactly what I had to do, right? Like all the programming that I was running on was broken. And it wasn't even my programming. It was instilled in me from my parents who mean well. Like they want you to be successful and do all these things, but I was perf overworking, overachieving, perfectionist. Like I couldn't operate that way anymore. And kind of like to t to piggyback on what you were saying, like fear can be the ultimate truth teller too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so many of the training that we get in the world, as good intentioned as it is, there's some thoughts around healing and like removing fear. I just got to remove it, get rid of it, make it go away, which is an impossible act,
Right.
because fear is part of us. If fear is one of the tools in our emotional toolkit, it's time that we take the cellophane off that thing and oil it and sharpen it and master it, and then remember to put it down. And I use this metaphor a lot when talking about this. Can we finally stop turning a screw with a hammer? Because we've got the screwdriver in our pocket,
Right.
you know.
Because we need a little bit of fear, right? We need a little bit of fear
Oh,
to take care of ourselves, right? Like in your 20s, if you weren't afraid of getting old and disease, like or just, quote unquote letting yourself go, even in that regard of vanity, like you wouldn't exercise and eat right to begin with,
I
right?
love that you're claiming the need for fear. Yes, 100%. And so when fear comes knocking at the door, we're taught plug your ears and hide under the bed and la 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 la. I want nothing to do with it, which means we're not receiving the wisdom of fear. Why is it a tool, a useful tool? So I always say, okay, well, what about once we get past the initial immediate danger, like a saber-toothed tiger eating your belly, right? Okay, we're past that moment. Like for you, for example, in your story, oh my gosh, I got the diagnosis with the C word.
Mhm.
But then the next moment is, I'm still breathing.
Mhm.
Wait a minute, I'm not dead yet. you know, and from a kind of a silly, clownish point of view, any of us could go, you know what? I'm not dead yet. So what now what?
Right.
So now what? So then fear, what about when fear knocks on your door? It's an opportunity to slow down, reorganize, plan, research, learn, and get ready to speed up. Another way I like to say that is when fear knocks on the door, set the table, get out the china, light the candles, and give them the good wine and the cheese and ask them why they have come,
Right.
right? Because there's usually always there is a gift in fear.
Yeah.
But if we're under the bed going, I can't receive the gift, I can't receive the gift, I can't receive the gift, then it gets louder, more complicated. We become sick. Our
Mhm.
spirit knocks louder and louder and louder and louder until we finally say yes to something more
Right.
than where we are right now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, I was so afraid of going through this again that I was like, I will do anything. L- Let me know and let me know what I need to do. And, you know, I was, I just leaned into what my gut was showing me because, like, literally, there's no blueprint, there's no survivorship plan. So,
No heroes and role models for this journey.
oh, no. And, so I just said, what do I need? Well, I need to, like, be inside of my body again, number one. Like, I've been so disconnected for we're almost 5 years in now
Yeah.
that it was like I have to reconnect here first. I have to
Yeah.
get back inside myself. But how do you do that? Right? Like everything, every ache and pain, everything I'm thinking is like, oh my God, it's cancer. How do I like stop that? And so it's like through somatics, I was able to do that. But it's most people that have gone through the same thing. They're so disconnected from what's happening even in their body that no wonder they have all these triggers and like all these things,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
And it can be really scary when you're not even inside yourself.
Especially when you have no good examples. Like I said a second ago, all of a sudden I don't have a hero or a role model for this.
Hmm.
So where do you go? And as
Right.
we said a few minutes ago, this is once again, this is when we stop looking out because we cannot find it this way. And we start looking in
Right.
our own. And this is like, okay, it's like heart mind coherence, our busy, worried brain, worried, creating all the anxiety in the world, which depletes our resources like crazy. But I think the antivenom of anxiety is anticipation,
Mm.
which means we're engaging the dreamer, we're engaging our intuition. And like anxiety depletes our resources because we are investing and spending our resources on an unwanted outcome.
Mhm.
Anxiety shows up because we're giving our resources, our life force, to an unwanted outcome.
Right.
When we do that for extended periods of time, we get sick. The anticipation piece, let's turn it over for a second. Okay, all right, now there's nothing left. I've expended all of my options, but I'm still breathing. All right? Well, and I can no longer afford the negativity and the fear. My survival is demanding that I have a course correction in energy first. I need to have some relief. I need to experience joy. I need to laugh. I need to see the people who are worried about me have the relief too,
Yeah.
so that we can tell some stories and make some memories together.
Yeah.
So then, okay, anticipation, how do we do that? Because anticipation fills the well of our resources because we're spending our resources on a desired outcome. Another way to say that, we're choosing life.
Yeah.
And when we choose life, life chooses us
Mhm.
in such a big way.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I just leaned into into myself of like, what do you need? Okay, well, obviously the way you're coping isn't working. Maybe we should get new coping mechanisms and skills to deal with that. And so it's just like everything that I've done selfishly has been to heal myself, obviously, and get myself to a better physical, mental, emotional space, but also to give back to the women that want help, need help, and are my clients. And it's helped them collapse so much time that I spent trying to figure it out.
Oh, for sure. Oh, so, do you know Lisa Nichols, the
Yeah.
famous, the motivational speaker? I just love her energy so much. She has a quote that she uses all the time in her storytelling. If I climbed out of my story and I'm standing on top of my story
Mhm.
with my hand out for the next one who's ready.
Exactly.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Like, why am I a coach? Why am I hosting a podcast? Because if I know that if I can address my shadows at that level and climb out of my story, and from this high place, I can see so far. And what I can see from that high place is that every step along the journey was meant for me.
Right.
I gathered the wisdom of my suffering is now turning into satisfaction. My woundedness is turning into wisdom, and I am now choosing to be in service to those who are following me on their own path similar to mine.
Yes.
And that's where you and I met.
I know. And that's the funny thing is like you just said something that's so prevalent. Like my client a couple weeks ago literally asked me, "Am I happy that I went through cancer?" And she immediately was like, You know what I mean, right?" And I was like, I do. I'm not offended by the question. I understand what you're saying is like, would I would I trade going through cancer for the life that I was living before versus the life that I have now?" And without skipping a beat, I literally said back to her, I go, "No, I don't regret going through cancer. So, in a nutshell, am I happy that I went through it? Like, yes and no. Like, no, I didn't want to go through it like that, but I'm glad I went through it because it was my catalyst to live the life that I'm so loving right now and become myself."
The road home.
Yes, 100%.
The people who've known me a long time know that I think that one of the most powerful prayers that we could ever say is two words. It's welcome home.
Whew.
In my mind, that's not the house that we sleep in. That's the return to joy. It's the return to our spirit. It's the return to the art of the present moment, because that's the only time that we are powerful.
Yes.
If we're worried about yesterday or worried about tomorrow, we've just gave the power away today. And tomorrow never happens. And yesterday is a story that we can redefine and re-understand. So that's the nature of my work, because of my journey, is to say, okay, let's use the power of story to understand our experience, including our shadow, our black bags, our suffering, because we all come here to do that. I believe that we're a spirit having a human experience, and part of that is to forget all that we knew as spirits so that we can be on the road to remember.
Yeah,
And that includes our suffering, that includes our struggles and our challenges. And nobody gets out of them. We all have them.
we all do.
And that's why, like, creating a story like this today and being a venue to share it so that other people who might stumble across our path today, Casey, might find themselves in our story.
Yeah.
And maybe even find themselves in our story in such a way that they might have more than some hopefulness.
Right?
And then let's raise that into some anticipation about what could be,
Hmm.
as opposed to worried about what might happen. Yeah.
But it's true. Like, I had to 180 myself, for lack of a better word, because what we don't repair, we repeat. And I wasn't willing to continue to repeat the same thing that with a different result because I wasn't getting it. And you are right. It's a complete homecoming. It's a complete like I'm me again. I am myself before the programming. I am able to experience happiness and joy in ways that I never, ever, ever thought possible.
Yeah.
And it,
So
it, it
so
keeps
let's
getting,
grab that. Let's grab that moment, because that's the hope that turns into the faith. And the faith turns into the dream, and the dream becomes more clear the more we redream the dream. When we redream the dream, we make the future memory of how good it can be. And in so doing, we pull the anchor out of the past, out of our suffering, and reset it into the future in such a way that it is the only way to go. It's
Yeah.
forward.
Hmm.
Finally stop reacting and start creating. I really believe we can only do one or the other. And so
Yeah.
when we stop reacting, we take our power back. And what we do, we create, we imagine, which is our birthright. So many of the religions in our world say that we are made in God's image or other similar ideas. As a
Hmm.
gay man, I don't really resonate with most of the religions that don't allow me there.
Right.
But they all have the wisdoms in common. So if we're made in God's image and we're supposed to be creators, wouldn't the original sin be to not create?
Right.
What does that mean? Well, what did Cory just say? And that's a topic for a completely different episode. However, in this moment, especially if you're out there and you're scared, if you're scared beyond belief and you're not quite sure and you resonate with some of the stuff that we dug out of our stories today, what I really want to say to you, please dare to dream a little bigger.
Right. There's a reason we have dreams to begin with. Like, I remember all through my journey, I just kept dreaming of a life that I wasn't going through this anymore, right? Well, and it would change every single day of what it was, but I never stopped looking forward. I never stopped, like, thinking I wasn't going to be alive, if that makes sense. Like, despite what was happening on paper, despite what was my reality, I never stopped dreaming and thinking, like, about my future, having a future. And even in the simplest form of like vacations, like anything that would spark some sort of hope in my life, I needed.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah.
And the journey is the same. If, for example, no matter where you are, for anywhere from suffering to satisfaction, from destitute to delight, wherever you are in that journey, and a new idea occurs to you, a new aha moment, a new course correction, a new path, a new opportunity, a new dream shows up in your reality, the journey is the same,
Yeah.
exactly the same. What are you saying a more powerful yes to than a no? Are we aware of what we're running toward more powerfully and more often than what we're running away from?
Right.
Right. Angela Sarian, uh, one of my mentors and heroes, she died several years ago, cultural anthropologist, folklorist.
Mm.
I'm going to loosely, I can't quote it directly, I don't have it memorized, but she would say, the world today can no longer afford to only describe what is broken,
Mm.
parentheses, we can all talk about what's broken with no rehearsal in vivid detail instantly,
Mhm.
right? Politics, whatever, because we're taught to.
Yeah.
The world can no longer afford to only describe what is broken without a more powerful prescription of the solution for it.
Right.
So we need to spend at least 65% of our day talking about solutions,
Right.
dreams. We're activating the daydream. We're stepping into how good we can make it. Our imagination, accessing our intuition and our dreams to say, oh, because of my suffering, for me and my immediate circle, I can go, what would be great? And wouldn't that be great too? And wouldn't look what the benefits that would happen because of that. And if we had that, look what becomes possible. And if that's possible, look at the ripple goes out from here, inner circle to the outer circle to the outer circle, and then out into the world and humanity.
And it's that hope, which is the direct opposite of fear.
So let's have some hope. Let's
Right?
surround ourselves in light and goodness.
We all need it. We all know things are broken, but where are the dreamers with the solutions? Talk about those more, right?
We are all the dreamer.
I know. But we
I
don't
love
have,
to say we are the medicine.
yeah.
And I love that we talked about earlier, there's that moment when we stop looking out and we start looking in more powerfully,
Mhm.
because we are the medicine. We have it within us to course correct, and I've seen in my own journey people with stage 4 cancer who don't anymore.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
I have clients that are there. I was on death's door. A drug not for my cancer saved my life. Like, that logistically doesn't even make sense.
And the thing that I think the most of those people that I've seen in my life, what they have in common is they didn't choose to believe 100% the only story that came to them,
I agree.
because there's always more.
There is,
There's always more.
right?
Yeah. So, well, Casey, oh, my goodness, what an amazing conversation that we've had today. Thank you for being so courageous and so bold and vulnerable in sharing your story with the world. I appreciate your time. Tell us a little bit about your practice and your coaching.
So I work with clients all over the world. And if you ever are in a position where you are going through cancer or are a survivor of cancer and you would like to not live in fear and be in a physically, mentally, and emotionally strong place, reach out. You can find me on Instagram at The Happier Hustle, um, or on Facebook, YouTube as well. and
We'll have all of that in the show notes below. So yeah.
and regardless, if you just even listen to this story, reach out and say hello. I would love that. Hope is the most powerful drug that you can give someone. And Cory, I'm so grateful to be a part of this, to give people that same nugget of hope.
Well, Casey Kang, it is my delight and my pleasure to get to know you even better. When we first met, we had an incredible conversation right off the bat. We had definitely some sparky energy between us. I'm sure that this is not the last time that we will co-collaborate and create something cool together. You're a coach and I'm a coach, and maybe there's something in our future that we can do together. I would certainly entertain whatever magic we can create in the future.
I would love to.
Me too. All right, everybody out there, I'm Coach Cory Threewing, super conscious recode coach, mindset coach, and I do a very similar set of healing to what Casey's doing here. And you heard some of that coming out of my words. So anybody out there, if you're resonating with Casey or myself or both of us, please reach out. Don't wait. Put yourself first and make a phone call. Reach out. You can find the links to find us here. We welcome you 100% of the day. This has been another juicy conversation inside Fear to Freedom, one story at a time. Casey Kang, thank you for your time, your energy, your commitment, and your magic. I'm Cory Threewing. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you next time. Be well.